Oh, man. All right. Well, I'm 1 second forward on my little timer here, but that's okay.
Yeah,
that's right. We're going to hit it exactly at 27:30. We're on right now, right? We're moving?
Yeah, we're moving.
Great. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Super pumped to be here. You're listening to Honest to God, a production of AM 1160 The Quest, Atlanta's Catholic Radio. Nailed the intro that time, producer Julian. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, you did. You should be proud of it.
Yeah,
that was
thanks,
great.
man. We got a good show today. Officially, it's psychology and Catholicism, but then we're going to see where that goes. We got veterans here. We got pros. We got Grace all the way from Steubenville, Ohio, in studio today.
Yeah, I guess.
And then we got Josh all the way from Augusta?
Athens.
Yeah. Cool. But Augusta University of Augusta.
That's right. Yeah. It's part of the
medical
college
school
name. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Awesome, guys. So we're going to have a really good show today. We're going to get into a lot of things, but we're going to do fun facts. Before we do that, though, Grace's dad just really impressed me with a prayer a few minutes ago. And so I'm assuming that it's genetic, and Grace is going to lead us in prayer.
All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Lord, for this day, for the gift of life. I ask in humility that you take the empty vessel that I am and you fill me with your spirit so that anything that I say today can be used for your glory. We offer up this podcast and all that is said and done in this work here today be for your glory and the benefit of our universal church. We give you all glory and honor as we pray, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, the world without end. Amen.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. 91 and a half.
Okay.
That's where that was. That's where that lands. Yeah. You did do the rope prayer at the end, but it was like glory be. People don't usually do that.
I like
Feast of the Trinity.
Right.
Yes.
We went to Mass today and they said that. They're like, how often do you say in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit? Like so often, so many times in our lifetime. And it was just like a reminder of the presence of the Trinity in our day-to-day life.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
No, I dig that. That's really cool. We had a guest speaker or a guest priest at our parish early in the mountains today who gave a killer homily. It was a Franciscan fella from apparently they've got a friary in downtown Atlanta.
Oh.
Somewhere they do homeless ministry and stuff.
Cool.
Super cool. Big fan of the Franciscans. Speaking of which, I just saw Grace up at Franciscan a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just got back. I don't know, probably like 3 weeks ago or something like that. It's good to be back in Georgia. I forgot like what the sky looked like. Not to be dramatic, but it's very gloomy up there.
Is it still gloomy right now this time of year? Normally it's kind of...
No, it does. It gets better during the summer, but I wasn't there for much of the summer.
There's like 2 months where Steubenville, Ohio does not look like a Rust Belt, decrepit dystopian nightmare.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't experience those.
Okay, that's fair.
I just have like, and I loved my experience there. It was great. It was wonderful. But the weather was definitely one of the downsides.
Yeah, I'm an alumni of Franciscan University. Big fan of the school. Big fan of the stuff they do up there. But the town looks the way sulfur smells. That's the best description I've got. Yeah. And it's a great place, and I really recommend it to anybody who's listening.
It's also really cool to see like the little pockets of like life and joy and brightness. And
like the university itself.
Like the university,
you literally go uphill, like figuratively and physically to the campus. Yeah.
That's so true.
So it's cool. All right, well, you owe us 2 fun facts. It's been a long time. And then Josh just says 1 because he's here all the time. Every time I'm here now, it seems like Josh is here. Mm-hmm. I tried to set him up with a girl the last time he was up here, but he's apparently already has a serious girlfriend.
I'm struggling to think of fun facts. Okay, I got one. I've started working at a winery up here again. So
is it Monteluce?
No.
Oh.
It's Cavender Creek.
I had my 10-year anniversary at Monteluce.
Oh, well, you chose the wrong winery, but that's okay.
My wife ordered a giant porterhouse steak, and I got like a pasta dish because I actually don't like beef that much. I eat a lot of venison, but I don't like beefsteak. And the waiter came and put the steak in front of me and the pasta in front of her, which makes sense, right? I'm the bearded large man and she is the pretty little lady. And instead of waiting until the waiter left for us to just quietly switch it, she announced out loud, and I felt emasculated that, no, mine is actually the big masculine meal. His is the little petite lady food.
You can give him the spaghetti.
Yes, please give him what you order your children when you go to a fancy restaurant.
I love it.
Yeah, and then we had a fight about it. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're saying. So that's your 1 fun fact. It's like, well, it doesn't even have to be about you. It just has to be fun.
Can I give the one I was going to say?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Oh, the one that I mentioned when you came in here?
I don't know what. Yeah,
Your high school, right? I was going to say my second fun fact was going to be that John Henry almost got kicked out of his high school.
Yeah, that's not entirely true. The high school that I went to in 9th grade was really terrible.
Okay.
I would have had to work a lot harder than some minor grand theft auto charges to get kicked out of that school. That being said, it was the catalyst for my parents to decide that they were kicking me out of that school.
Okay, got it.
And probably the best decision I ever made in my life literally was stealing a car, because eventually it led to me being removed from the school and going to a new school, and a long series of events that eventually led me into the church and to my bride. And
yeah. Schooling is so important in just like a person's development, especially because you're at such a young age as you go through it.
The people you are with are so important. I think, I'm raising kids right now, and my oldest is 12. He's in middle school. He acts like it. And great kid, love him to death. But he's at this point where I'm starting to realize, we're not that far away from thinking about college and all those things, and about my college experience, how great that was, and how formative that was for me. And I'm starting to think that sort of all the formation and attempts to inculcate virtue and just everything you pour into those kids from the time they're infants really comes down to the first 2 weeks or so when they're on their own, them saying, hey, I'm attracted to that kind of person and not that kind of person. Mm-hmm. I want to go hang out with those guys. They seem like good human beings. And it really kind of all boils down to that. Yeah. And that's terrifying in a way.
A little scary.
Yeah. Anyway, so go Knights. I graduated from Deerfield Windsor in Albany, Georgia, after a little situation in Americus, Georgia in September of 2004. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Josh, what you got? You got a fun fact for us?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that you tried to set me up, and unfortunately for you, I already have a girlfriend.
Oh, I thought you were about to say, my girlfriend and I just broke up. What's her name?
No, I was going to say the fun fact has to do with her because of that. We met in the confession line at the UGA Catholic Center, which is a pretty good meet cute. So, yeah.
That's actually a really good pro tip if you're trying to meet somebody. Yeah. You don't even have to need to go to confession.
It works.
Just go hang out.
Recycle to go line.
Like sit in the pew and wait, and then when the good-looking guy or gal, sits down,
I have to
go get in line.
Yeah, it worked for me.
And then let them see the sins that you're typing down on your phone, but let them be sins that make you appear like, I cared too much and missed an appointment because I rescued an orphan from a well, right? Things like that.
Perfect.
Yeah. Base your relationship on lies. No, that's not true. That's not actually what I'm pitching there. No.
I hope not.
Wait, can you flesh that story out a little bit more?
Well, there isn't really a ton to it, I guess. Okay. Bree would tell you that there's a lot to it because... Well, I've always been worried, and hopefully this guy's out there, that I kind of like pushed somebody a little bit away from things by being a little too brutal in the confession line. Because we were having a conversation. Bree was talking to this guy about his conversion experience coming back into the church, I think it was, after getting really into Eastern spirituality.
Sure.
And so he was talking about Buddhism and started to talk about how Buddhism can be made fairly compatible with the Catholic faith, because there are aspects of Buddhism, insofar as it's a philosophy rather than a religion, that are true.
Okay.
Right? There's truth in all religions, and so insofar as we can find the truth in Buddhism, it's something that we should pay attention to.
Okay.
And then we might be able to adapt and bring into the faith. But I felt like he was going a little bit too far with it, and I of course was my normal aggressive self.
And you didn't know either of these people? You were just listening to this conversation?
Okay, that's right. Yeah, I think I might have shaken Bree's hand at that point, because I was talking to the person, so she was 2 ahead of me, and this guy she was talking to was ahead of her. And I met Chris, one of my other good friends in Athens. I met 2 of my best friends in Athens on like the first time I went to confession there before I knew anybody else. The first girl I actually met in Athens, Georgia is the girl I'm with.
No way. Okay, that's awesome.
Quite a wonderful thing. But so I was talking to Chris, and then I kind of overheard that conversation. I think I kind of briefly introduced myself, and then I was like, actually, Buddhism's pretty nihilistic, and that's fundamentally incompatible with the Catholic faith.
That is the right way to handle that.
Which is a true. It's definitely very true, and an important message to get across, especially because Buddhism can be a very dangerous philosophy, because nihilism is one of the worst ones. but I think I could have approached it a little bit more gently. But so my first meeting with my beloved was me aggressively arguing philosophy with somebody who wasn't really asking for it.
That's great. Okay, cool.
Which is a good introduction. I feel like she got a good idea of who I am, right, from that. And then yeah, we ended up chatting the rest of the time until she had to go for confession. So,
I really dig that. And then did she come out and you asked for a number?
I wish that it had been that simple. So I was in. So they have two priests there, good holy priests, Father Brian and Father Michael.
Right.
I think I got to go into Father Michael, and he's a great confessor, so that was great. But I was in confession when she came out, so I didn't get to see her. But it was very sweet because she texted me later and was like, "Hey, I'm praying for you," because that's right. We'd talked about at the time I was discerning whether or not I wanted to go in sign a military contract to have a scholarship, the HPSB scholarship. I don't know if anybody out there has heard of it. It's a scholarship through the U.S. military, any of the branches except the Marines because they're under the Navy. But anyway, where you get medical school paid for. Where you get medical school paid for if you sign up for 4 years of service after you're done, which is really cool. Possibility, but wasn't really the path for me. So I credit that to her prayers, I guess, because she was praying for me. So very beautiful thing for her to text me. But then it took another 6 months until I actually asked her out because I hadn't seen her, and I'm kind of traditional. I like to ask out girls in person.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So
thank you on behalf of the next generation. Then you text her. Okay, great.
Yeah. I broke down because I wasn't seeing her, and I was like, I want to see this girl. So, and now here we are.
I had to ask my wife's dad permission to marry her over the phone, and I felt really bad about that.
That's a rough one.
It was because, and producer Julian was in a similar situation. We've talked about how we went to the same college. We found out the school was shutting down. I had the ring in a drawer, like in my desk drawer in my dorm room, and I wanted to propose to her on campus because that's where we met. My whole conversion, everything had happened there, and then we got a random email one day, kind of out of the blue, that said, "Hey, fun fact, we're not resuming classes after spring break. School's gone. So, sorry." And so I had to call him on the phone and say, "Hey, this is not how I want to do this. I really want to marry your daughter. Can I please have permission to do that? I want to do it here." Yeah. And it worked out. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Feel like she might be the one. That's a joke. We have 5 kids together. We've been married for 13 years. Yeah, it's definitely a permanent thing. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
We should just dig into that. Can we just talk about everybody's relationships for that? All right. So I don't know if I've got a good segue for this, but I do real quick before we get to psychology and talking about that, totally unrelated to anything we just talked about with your relationship. This episode of Honest to God is brought to you by K Jewelers. K Jewelers. Diamonds are forever, it says, and most of them aren't blood diamonds anymore. So that's cool. I don't know. Yeah. That was neat. So make sure you go use K Jewelers for all your engagement ring or other jewelry kind of needs. Yeah. K Jewelers.
And thank you to K Jewelers for the sponsorship. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, please reach out. Young adults at thequestatlanta.com.
Yep.
I want to say this. Or Bradley Harris, who just got Murphy's. He's local.
Or Bradley Harris, local guy. Yeah.
Bradley
just
Harris.
got your bra. I guess we can talk about that on the air real quick.
Yeah.
Can you release the big news? I don't know if
my brother is now engaged to Monica, who has been on the show before. You got to go back. Maybe we'll link her episode. She's awesome. It was so fun because it was during the same time as his graduation up at Franciscan. So we had a bunch of family in town, and her family actually flew in as well to surprise her because she knew it was like coming eventually, but she was kind of thrown off the scent, didn't know it was going to happen that weekend. And it was the day before he graduated, I think, that he proposed to her.
That's so great. Yeah. Well, congratulations.
And in true like Murphy fashion, it was like a couple weeks before he decided to propose that he was like, I need to get a ring. And then he was like, I want to do a custom design too. And so he was like, Dad, do you think your guy can help me? And will I be able to get it done in time? And he got the ring 2 days before he proposed.
That's perfect. I love that.
But it looks beautiful, and it's a great union.
Big shout out.
I'm so excited for the wedding.
We got to have them both on the show now that they're engaged and really dig into all that. That'd be awesome. So I want to really dig into something you said last time you were on, maybe a couple times ago. Yeah. And I think I was throwing some shade at psychology in general. And I was saying that sort of my understanding of it, or my first impression, the connotations I have when somebody brings up psychology is middle-aged women with purple hair who hate everything that is true, good, and beautiful. And then you countered, and I thought really adeptly, with, no, if we have to understand what is true, we have to understand human nature, what is rightly ordered, and all of these things to say whether or not a person is operating mentally in alignment with that. Right. And that really was like a kind of eye-opening thing for me. I thought it was super interesting, and I've been chewing on that for a month or so since we talked last.
Me too.
And great. Yeah, I want to get more into sort of psychology from a Catholic perspective and why it's something we as Catholics should. This might sound harsh, but this is what I mean. Take seriously, because I think it has gotten so thrown into sort of the pseudoscience. At least that's what I think when I think psychology.
Yeah,
I think about the girl in What Is a Woman who he interviewed, who gave the
gender.
Actually, I can't speak to that because I'm not a man or a woman and all of that thing. And I hate that for psychology as a science. Yeah. So can you tell me why that's nonsense and there's actually something respectable about this?
I can try my best. So because part of the problem here is that like I can try my best to defend it, but I feel like before I even do that, I almost want to like allow for the defeat, because in a lot of ways the psychological sciences just generally have been completely invaded with ideology.
Sure. Like a lot of our sciences.
Like a lot of them. Yeah. And unfortunately, as a social science, it's particularly susceptible to it as well. And social sciences are about human beings, and they're about how human beings interact, to define a social science most generally. And so in order to have a robust, coherent, truthful social science, you also have to have a conception of what the human being is. And unfortunately, because psychology allowed itself to become secular in an attempt to try to be objective, I think that these sort of secular ideologies took over the conception of the human person that underlies the psychological sciences. So basically what we have right now is a philosophy that masks itself as science, a philosophy of the human person masking itself as if it's a science that has kind of infiltrated a lot of the really good objective truth to be found in the psychological sciences. And that's I think a lot of why psychology in particular among the sciences is particularly prone to being corrupted, right? Because it's so directly linked to a philosophy. It has to have a philosophy of the person in order to even really begin to operate. So I think that's a lot of it.
So you said that it became secularized, right? Yeah. Was it not originally?
I guess it was sort of born that way.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Because I think of it as one of the social sciences that's sort of born in this post-Enlightenment, whatever sort of culture, right?
Right.
Where you've got all this, some of it is just nonsensical stuff that's coming out of that time period. So can you give us anything on the history of it and how it began? And is it a corruption, or is this something that you're saying, no, it was always kind of corrupted, but there is this streak of goodness in there that's really important that we need to, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So all of the truth is part of one comprehensive and cohesive whole. And so that means that every single one of the fields, every one of the sciences, and every one of the arts, all of these things together are different ways of looking at the full picture of the truth. So psychology, I would say, a pretty coherent definition of psychology comes just directly out of the word. And I think I mentioned this the first time I was on with you. Psychology is suke logos. It's the logic of the soul. So it's the study of the soul. And so if we're going to understand what psychology should be, we should take the kind of bare bones form, which is that specific identifier, that it's identifying the science that understands how the human soul operates. Right. And so if that's the case, then it's kind of like this sort of thing where like the Catholic Church is the true church and it like will never fail. That doesn't mean that the Catholic Church isn't corrupt in a lot of ways. Sure. Because it definitely is, because it's a human institution as well as a divine institution. To kind of use that as an analogy, psychology itself as a study of the human soul, as a science is good and true insofar as you actually can boil it down to those sort of bare bones, to what psychology actually is, which is the truth about the human person. Right. So like that I think that just kind of clarifying that I think is really important in this sort of modern just mess that we're in with all of the sciences, because it can become really tempting to say like, this science has been corrupted, so like we need to throw that out. But it's really not the science that's actually the problem. The science is the thing that's good, that's being corrupted, like the human person is corrupted by sin, but the human person is good. But then you mentioned history. I don't know a lot about history. I wish I knew more. But I do know a little bit about Freud, and Freud is seen as the founder of modern psychology.
He's wrong about everything, isn't he?
Not everything.
Not everything.
A lot of people,
but he has some wacky ideas that kind of, like you said, makes you want to just like toss everything out the window. You're like, no.
Yeah, he's an interesting thinker for sure, because he does have some really fundamental errors. And as far as his philosophy of the human person goes, there are some really fundamental mistakes, and the central one being that he basically says that religion, sum total, is it's just an ego defense. It's just an anxiety. It's just a way to defend us against the death anxiety. And so he uses the genetic fallacy to say that because we have this desire for a father who can really protect us, that means that religion must be false, which is a pretty bold-faced logical fallacy. But anyway, but to talk about Freud and kind of how I think that his philosophy actually wasn't just fundamentally corrupt, and it actually started psychology off on the right foot in one way, is that really Freud saw himself as a scientist first and foremost. And that's something that I think gets forgotten sometimes, because he's so much more philosophical than other scientists, than like our modern conception of what a scientist is. But he saw himself as building a conception of what the human person is based on his experience with people in psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. So he would talk to many, many, many people, his patients, and get to know how they work, basically, how their minds work, and built on top of what he was seeing based on observation, a theory that could help to understand those observations, which that's kind of like the basic functioning of any science. And insofar as he did that, he actually is an absolutely masterful thinker. He was a genius. Like he really contributed a lot of important ideas to like the deposit of human reason.
I think that's so interesting, because I love what you said a second ago too, Grace, is I have, especially in the last few years post the COVID deal, I have gotten to where almost my tendency, my knee-jerk reaction is almost to throw the baby out with the bathwater on so many things. And so you just see, oh, wow, we've been lied to about X, Y, or Z, and whatever topic this is, be it politics, be it medicine, be it whatever. Okay, so clearly I can't trust anyone who has this degree or is in this profession. All right, forget about it. I'm done. And I don't like that about myself. I think that's sort of a jaded, cynical view. But I know a lot of people who are like that, right? A lot of people who have sort of taken this, well, we can't believe anything anymore, so we just kind of have to start from the very bottom. Okay, cool. That's interesting.
I tend to think that way too. And that's why Bree's been really good for me. She's helped me to kind of try to nuance my thought a little bit. Because it does seem dangerous, and I think because it seems dangerous, when you have something dangerous, you have to kind of like lump it, because lumping and splitting things is the way that we can defend ourselves. Because if we were trying to be like really, really nuanced about every single threat that we approach, then we might not be appropriately prepared to actually identify the threat and fight it. So I think that it makes a lot of sense that people are like very prone to want to just throw out the whole of something because it's been corrupted.
So can we just throw out, if we can't throw out all of psychology, can we throw out all of psychiatry? Because that seems...
it often seems like that would be really good. And in a lot of ways, because of how corrupt the way that psychology because of how corrupt psychiatry has become in its practice, it is tempting to want to throw out a lot of it. The thing that I come back to, though, is that what is psychiatry actually at its base? Because psychiatry is actually the father of psychology in a way. All of the first psychologists were almost all also medically trained.
Interesting.
Which is an interesting thing that gets forgotten. There's actually a really interesting history behind how psychologists on the PhD level gained the authority to do psychotherapy. Because originally it was only psychiatrists who could do psychotherapy. So there's an interesting battle that kind of took place. I think it was in the 50s or 60s, around that. in the 60s. I don't know if it was good then.
Where everything great happened. The
That's
60s.
right. Yeah. So I think psychiatry though has the same sort of thing as psychology. It's like psychiatry is specifically like the medical practice of like treating the human psyche
Right.
according to like all the different treatments that we have discovered. Some of those are medical, meaning like medications and things that are going to directly affect the human body by direct intervention. And I think that if we can boil it down to what it actually is and not allow our conception of what psychiatry is to be too influenced by the specific corruptions, then that's where we actually can like kind of find the door into redeeming it and bringing it back to what it's supposed to be, which is the psychiatry in particular is supposed to be the therapeutic, usually medical treatment of human psychological distress.
No, fantastic. So I want to get into, and we're going to have to take a break here in a second, but I definitely want to get into a conversation about addiction a little bit.
Okay.
And I want to get into a conversation about the temperaments, mostly because you're a white girl in college, so I feel like you know a lot about the temperaments.
Probably.
That's been my experience
Really?
with girls who go to get. Do you? Have you read the temperament guy gave you?
No.
No. Are you serious?
No, I'm familiar with the temperaments from my high school and the retreats. We had retreats
Oh
on
my
the
God! I
temperaments.
assumed you were an expert. My wife, when she was 19 years
That's
old,
funny.
that was like all she.
I do
she
love
got
talking
super
about
into.
personality.
Great.
and
Okay. Well,
personality
I definitely want to get
differences,
into that in a minute. But
yeah.
before we break, once again, I'm trying to overcome my own jaded cynicism here.
Good. Yeah. It's hard
What
to
are
do.
some good books or resources that I or somebody like me who kind of has this jaded view, right, could look at psychology or psychiatry from a more Catholic perspective?
In 1 minute or less.
Do you have any?
I was going to say the family I stayed with this past semester, the dad of the family is a psychologist, and he has an Instagram page called Ask a Catholic Psychologist or something like that.
Cool.
Or Ask a Catholic Therapist. I'll have to look it up and we'll put it in
What's
the
his
show
name?
notes. Matt Berninger.
Okay. I've heard of him.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
And like the St.
We'll
Paul
put that in the show
Institute
notes.
has a lot of like psychology professors from the university that talk about these things. So that could be a helpful source.
Awesome. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any, Josh?
I can give some more ideas after the break if you want, but also I'm just always going to recommend Jordan Peterson.
Yes, okay.
And I think that especially his book he wrote in the 90s, if you're really wanting to get into it, Maps of Meaning, fantastic.
Okay.
Obviously his more recent ones are good too.
We'll slap that in the show notes and give you a little time to think on it. And when we
Sounds
get back
good.
from break, we'll dig in more.
Great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You are listening to Honest to God, a production of AM 1160 The Quest, Atlanta's Catholic Radio. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is Honest to God, a production of the Quest Atlanta Catholic Radio. All right, guys, this is fun. I just want to hit the ground running because I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about everything in the world at the beginning of the first half, and then we kind of got into the meat of it and had to pull back. So let's jump right back in. I want to start by kicking one over to you, Grace. And I learned this literally at the break, and now I feel like an idiot. You're a psychology major.
Sort of.
Cool. Okay, great. And what? I guess you don't have to say the name of the school, but at a secular school, at a state school, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And can you talk? I mean, I know that you also are at a state school, but what does that look like? Are you seeing conflicts with the faith regularly?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest.
Please do.
I came from like the hybrid homeschool Catholic school background. So I was kind of nervous about college, like a secular college, because you have all the Catholic colleges coming in and promoting their campuses, which are great and beautiful, wonderful things. But they kind of demonize secular schools. So I was a little bit nervous going in.
Me too. I'll demonize them right now. Sorry.
Right,
Go on.
right. And there's reason for that, but also like there's a way to go to secular school
Totally.
and like really be resilient in your faith and
Yeah.
also be a witness to it, which I think is really cool.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so going in, I was like, all right, I'm ready to fight. Like, what am I going to have to do? But a lot of the courses surprisingly haven't challenged my faith at all. In fact, the biology class that I took, it was like intro to biology. I was expecting there to be like pushback because I saw like one of our chapters was on evolution.
Right.
And I was like, oh gosh, like we're going to get into it. But even like the textbook we had kind of acknowledged that like different religions have different like interpretations of it or whatever. And if anything, that course made me more like I guess, fascinated by Genesis and the story of creation.
Cool, yeah.
Because you could see how, like, even like the theory of evolution or just like survival of the fittest type things, like that's like all part of God's design
Right.
too. And like, you know, it starts small and it crescendos into something like big and glorious. And
I'm lame, and I'm always embarrassed by this. I wish I were cool enough to be like a young earth creationist Catholic, because there are some of those, and I think they're really neat.
It can be fun.
It's just not like there's not enough there for me to think there's anything to it. But I
Right.
really want to be that edgy, to be like, nope, Earth's 6,000 years old. I'm just not that cool.
Can we talk about something really cool related to Genesis?
for it.
Okay, I might have like shared this at one of the other times I was here, because I think it's so cool, or it might have just been one of the many times that I was ranting to somebody late at night about it.
Great.
Heard this from Jordan Peterson, of course, but really interesting. So they've done studies of primates in South America, as psychologists are wont to do, and they have found that one of the things that drives cortical development was the development of the eyes. So this is a pretty well-known fact across primate species, that one of the things that drove cortical development in humans and in other primates alike is our development of really fine vision, so like in the macula, but also like color vision. So these monkeys would develop vision in order to see ripe fruit, and in particular, like that's particularly important for female monkeys who have to get a lot of sugar to care for their infants in order to breastfeed. But what's the really cool consequence of that is that because they were developing better color vision, forgive me, I actually went in the wrong direction here, because going in the right direction is a lot cooler. I went in the wrong direction. I said that they developed vision in order to see ripe fruit. They didn't. These monkeys were developing better vision in order to see the camouflage patterns associated with snakes.
That is
and
cooler.
so because the monkeys were capable of seeing snakes, in particular the female monkeys who are protecting their young, because these primates were developing vision to see the snake, they were then capable of seeing fruit and getting the fruit.
oh, wow. That's cool.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Because the fruit is really high in sugar content,
Right.
and you have to have a lot of calories to drive cortical expansion. So the snake made it so that the monkey could see the fruit,
Whoa.
so that its eyes were open, so that it became more knowledgeable.
That's really cool.
Isn't that weird?
I wasn't sure where you were
Yeah.
going the whole time, and then you brought it back. That's really neat.
Really strange. Yeah.
Go team primate. Still the best genus out
Oh,
there.
yeah, big time.
Hands down. Eat it.
For sure.
Whatever dolphins are a part of.
Right. Well, the thing with this is like there's some like Christian denominations that are strictly like, you know, you can't believe in evolution or like any
Right.
sort of
Yeah.
variety of that. Like it's strictly like it was 7 days and God made this and then this and this. But the cool thing about the Catholic faith is that there's no like definitive teaching besides we have to believe. There's a couple different things, but I know one of them is that at some point we were a different creation from other like species and animals,
Right.
and God infused the soul, and like he was the soul creator. He was before anything else. Hence like the definition of God. But like, I don't know, having that freedom, I guess, in our faith, and the fact that it wasn't like, oh, I have to pick and choose science or religion. It was like, no, like there was like this beautiful kind of meeting of the two of them that throughout like the whole class, I was just filled like with awe and wonder of like God and his creation.
Father Mike Schmidt does a really good piece on this, and I'm probably going to butcher his analogy, but I've always thought it was fantastic about the beauty, the freedom that doctrines give us, right? The fact that the church says, no, you have to believe X, Y, and Z, but A, B, and C, like you're allowed to, you can think
how
and
you get
play.
there.
And whatever.
Yeah.
And what the analogy he gives is an island in the middle of the ocean with sheer cliff walls, like 40 feet high, right? Rocks that you would be bashed to death on if you fell off the side, right? And if that island is just sitting there and you've got a lot of children on the island, right? You're going to have all of your children huddled with you in the very middle of the island, right? To keep you safe. There's no parameters or anything, right? They can fall off and die, right? But if there's a fence around the whole island, well, then the kids can run and they can play and they can enjoy this island and they can do all these things.
I like that.
And it was about how freeing doctrine is when the church says, no, we believe this. In order to be a Catholic, you have to believe this, this, and this, right? But all these other things, like, go wild, have fun.
Yeah, and same thing with like the commandments, like structure and rules,
Yes.
like those
Yes.
fences. They've done studies on like children playing in playgrounds, and when it is fenced in, they use more of the space.
Right.
They expand. But if it's not fenced off, they tend to stay like closer to the equipment or like the middle, whatever that is.
All right, Grace, you were just randomly scrawling something on your hand. Can you get into that a little bit?
Okay, well, we had a little mishap, so we had a little break, and then I was thinking about the 4 temperaments, because I know you said you wanted to get into those. So I was trying to replay the retreats I went on when I was in high school, and I remember us connecting the 4 temperaments to like what your root sin might be,
sure.
like, or the one that
Mine's pride. If we're playing that
me
game.
too.
Yeah, hey, go team. That's the best root sin.
Oh, yeah.
Is it?
First choice.
Are you very
Top-
proud of
top
that?
choice. Yeah, it beats all the other ones. That's right.
That's crazy. Well, okay. I can't remember, so I feel like I shouldn't kick us off, but I feel like I remember the main 3 being pride, vanity, and sensuality. And I can't remember. I remember cholerics generally tend towards pride, sanguines tend towards vanity, and phlegmatics tend towards sensuality. But I can't remember what melancholy people.
Just pick one.
Despair.
Maybe, yeah. Let's add a 4th. Maybe there
Gluttony.
was.
They just eat a lot when they're sad.
When they're sad.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah, there's psychology behind that. Psychology of eating.
So no, well, actually, that is actually a pretty good segue, and I don't want to brag, but once again, I did go to the Harvard School, but for segues, and I want to relate that back a little bit to, as a Catholic, once again, like Grace, in a very secular field right now. What does, I think I know the answer, but I want to hear you say it.
Oh.
What does your understanding of the faith, right, bring to psychology? Because if I were going to go to a psychologist, and I've been to a psychologist before, right? And I sought out a Catholic psychologist. I was like, I want to talk to a Catholic psychologist because that way we're speaking the same language. Is kind of how I viewed it. And when I talk about X, Y, or Z, and I use these words, he's going to know that this is what I mean.
Yeah.
But not with an individual sort of client on, one-on-one sort of situation, but to the field itself.
Yeah.
I mean, can you even be a great psychologist without being a Catholic? Dig into that.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that comes to my mind first of all is that a lot of the greatest psychologists were Jews. So that's interesting because it's proximally related to Catholicism.
Right.
But also the greatest psychologists haven't been Catholic, which is an interesting point. At least the greatest psychologists in terms of modern psychology.
Sure.
Because we could say like Augustine is one of the greatest psychologists.
I like that.
Dante is a great psychologist.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Aristotle probably even better than the rest of them, and Aquinas. Aquinas is like the divinized version of Aristotle. So
True. Yeah. 100%.
So I think that there's a lot of room to be a great psychologist without being Catholic and without having a perfect picture of what God's revelation to man is. The biggest problem that will lead you astray in psychology is having a bad philosophy of the human person.
Okay.
At least that seems to be my first thought. I think that Catholics will make the best psychologists because Catholics have the fullest picture of the end of the human person.
Sure.
So that's gonna mean that Catholic psychology is going to be the best psychology because it has the fullest picture of the truth. But I think that because there is a lot that we can know about human beings through reason, that we can know philosophically and scientifically, that it's not necessary for someone to be a Catholic to be a good psychologist.
Right.
And there are a lot of really great psychologists out there, despite the fact that there are very few Catholic psychologists out there. If I had to give advice as to how to find one, I don't think that I would really know. I think it's a very difficult thing to do. It'd be great to find a Catholic. I would say don't completely disregard credentials. There's a reason that some of them are called a doctor and some of them aren't.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have their doctorate isn't going to be a great therapist, but
and maybe this isn't what you're saying, but if I'm a totally secular relativist, what do I bring to the table as a psychologist if I don't have an understanding of human nature or if I don't have an understanding of truth as something that is objective? How can I speak to any of this?
I think that's sort of a situation where you might be depending upon your knowledge, depending upon a bunch of information that you've memorized in order to use that information as a tool to help people.
Okay.
And so people who do have a poor philosophy of the human person could still be good. They could still be good therapists.
If they were good scientists, probably.
If they're good scientists.
Right. Because human nature is scientifically demonstrable, I guess, in some way.
Yeah, you can look at human beings and look at them and try to distill out the basics of human nature, and then use that information, that knowledge that you've gained, then to help people. And that's the basic pattern, the basic formula for
I think
psychology.
one of the goals for psychology is to restore order, whether it's mental disorder or whatever it is. So if people have a bad philosophy of the human person or a bad philosophy of truth in general, they're going to have a hard time kind of figuring that out, I think. Because I love the discovery that I had. Somebody was talking to me about how even people who are atheists or oh, I'm not really religious, everybody has a God or something they kind of regard as God. So a good question to ask would be what is this therapist or what is this client regarding as their God? Because if it's themselves, what do they worship? Is it themselves or is it the science or what is it? Because you have to have a reason for existence. I think one of the biggest things I think of in terms of counseling would be a client with depression or anxiety. And it's what is the point to living? And I mean, a secular sense, it's I don't know, to just enjoy life. But then if you we crave something so much deeper, which is there is a God, there is meaning, there's purpose, you are loved, you are known. And
is there a secular psychologist's answer to that question, right? If I come in and I'm racked with depression or something and I say, what is the purpose of living? How do you answer that? I assume that's something that comes up in classes and things like that. How do you respond?
I wonder. I don't know.
There's some attempts. I don't know if there's any that are really as convincing as a full picture of what that answer would really be. But Man's Search for Meaning is probably the most popular one by Viktor Frankl. He was a Jew who was in concentration camps during World War II and made it out, and he was a psychiatrist, and so through his experiences he kind of distilled out what it is that gives people a sense of meaning that actually can save them even from the depths of hell, even from the horrible things that happen at a concentration camp.
Was he a secular Jew? Or was
it's hard to tell. I think that he had some religious sentiment about him. It doesn't really come out in his book.
Okay.
His book is pretty accessible to somebody from a secular perspective.
But does he have an answer? Does he have an answer to that question?
Yeah, that's the difficult thing, is because his answer is fundamentally responsibility, which is also the answer that Jordan Peterson, you'll notice, that's really resonated with a lot of people. That's the answer that he's given, is that taking responsibility is kind of the key to coming out of your really, I guess it would be the different neurotic disorders, because you're not going to taking responsibility may or may not help in a lot of other things, because one of the other important things to distinguish in psychology is to make sure that we're talking about, because we're talking about a very wide range of disorder, and the thing that people are most experienced with are what Freud would have called the neurotic disorders, but these are you'd call them nervous in the old psychological language, because that's referring to the fact that they, that refers to anxiety and depression and what sometimes are called existential issues. But we also have kind of what the other old-fashioned category, which is the psychotic disorders. And now we would identify schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, some of these other things, which are, I think, a lot more amenable to a psychiatric sort of intervention. So important distinction.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately a question that comes down to is a frustrating thing for me with a lot of the social sciences, when we've desperately tried for the last couple of 100 years to answer these questions with a relativistic mindset. And it just seems impossible to me. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why that got me interested in the faith early on to begin with, was the fact that they said, no, there's actually objective answers to these things, and they don't change even when opinions do. And even when truth is truth, no matter what. I teach a theology of the body class, and one thing that I do in a lot of my classes that I really enjoy, we spend the first half to 2/3 or so of the class not making moral arguments at all, but doing a deep dive into stats on anything. If it's sex before marriage, right? We're talking about fornication, right? And we don't start by saying, well, fornication is bad because it's a sin and it harms the heart of Jesus Christ. All that is true, and all those are actually the real reason why you should not fornicate. That's why.
That's the deepest reason.
But what we start with is, let's look at Pew Research on sexual partners before marriage and marital happiness and sexual satisfaction
symptoms of
and
sin.
longevity of marriages and all these things. And the message is sin is sin, regardless of whether or not you believe that it's sin. Okay, now let's
Still
look at why
harmful.
that's a sin.
Right.
And I think, I don't know, that's why I like what you said. If you're a good scientist, then you don't necessarily have to have a religious worldview to be able to answer those questions correctly or be able to help people in a real way.
Because ultimately, the job of the psychologist or the job of the psychologist in psychotherapy is not to answer every single question that the patient has. And it's also not to give the patient advice. Ultimately, the job of the psychotherapist is to guide that person towards a healthier and hopefully more truthful way of understanding to guide that person to a more truthful way of understanding himself and also the world around him.
Sure.
That's something that I think has kind of gone away, unfortunately, as people have allowed ideology to take them over and to take over the psychological sciences, is that when your ideology trumps the science, then you start to opt for giving advice rather than actually doing psychotherapy, which is almost entirely listening. One other thing I wanted to add to that, because we were talking about values and how it's really important in looking for somebody who's going to provide you with guidance and also direct your development to know that they have the right values and that they value the things that are going to actually lead you to God. I think most secular people probably worship the self.
Sure.
And I think that part of the reason that psychology has become corrupt in particular is because psychology, in a certain sense, is the science of the self. It's the science that has the most direct things to say about human personhood and about what it means to be a self. In fact, the whole conception of selfhood it really developed mostly in kind of a philosophical stream that was kind of in the realm of psychology. And it's a relatively new concept in one sense, the way we conceive of selfhood. But I don't know. I mean, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, because I think that perhaps that's part of the reason that psychology has been corrupted, is because we're prone to worship the self, and this is kind of the science of the self. And so psychology is going to attract people who worship the self, which is what the secular world does. And these people are going to become experts in the self, in both according to the truth and also according to their ideology. And because they become experts in the self, they also become the priestly class of the secular world, because the secular world worships the self, and the psychologist is kind of like the priest of the self. And so I think that's part of the reason that people are really wary of psychology from a religious perspective, because here psychology is kind of placing itself, it's kind of touting itself as if it's a religion. And a lot of people treat it like that. I mean, you'll talk to young people who treat their therapist like a priest, right? And that tends to be the way that they think about it as well.
It's interesting. I have a spiritual director who I've given numerous shout outs to on the show before, Father Bruce Wren. He's fantastic. He's a Legionnaire down down close to the city. He's phenomenal. I'm not RC. I'm not associated with the Legion, but I love their priests and I had some great experiences. Really my spiritual director's been a Legionnaire for the last 10 years. And I always, when I'm talking to people, especially young men, about spiritual direction, I always say some version of, well, it's basically like having a psychologist, except he can give you the sacraments and you know that he's legit, right? And because they train in this, right? There's a big piece that goes into that. So sort of continuing down what you were saying a second ago, I want to flesh this out just a little bit more. How can I apply with the knowledge that you guys are gaining through the study of this science, right? How do we apply that to our lives as an individual, right? I don't want the answer to be, well, go get a therapist, right? But how, what have you gleaned in the past however many years that you can apply to yourself as a, son or daughter of God? How does it affect your prayer life, or going back to the temperaments, or your understanding of yourself? Are there any useful tidbits that you might have that we don't have out here in the
I had a thought and I just completely lost it.
I'm sorry. I just talk and don't stop talking when I start.
Hold on. You can go ahead.
Yeah, and interrupt me when you remember.
Okay. Yeah, let me think.
I think that, so psychology is about the truth about the human person, and it's about learning about how human beings work. And so if we know how human beings work and how they think, if we know how human beings work and how they think through this science, then we can gain to an understanding of the individual human beings that we encounter in our life. And understanding other people is like the prerequisite to loving other people. And since loving is our highest calling, is to actually genuinely, deeply love people. If we have an understanding of what that love is, then one of the prerequisites to loving them is to have a pretty deep understanding of them. And psychology can offer some of that understanding. So I think that's one of the biggest things.
I think the thought that I had was that it can aid virtue, because kind of exactly like what you're saying, being able to better understand people, I think at least personally helps me to love them better. Like you're saying, to have more patience or like fortitude in different situations, just a better understanding of yourself can help you like apply areas that you need to grow in and areas that you need to kind of like scale back and just kind of find that homeostasis, that balance. But another thought that I had was a couple semesters ago, I had a class that was 12 different approaches to therapy. And as I was going through it, I was like sort of doing DIY therapy and like using it on myself, which was really interesting. But I kept coming back to this question, but this is so inconsequential if you don't believe in a God, if you don't believe in like this main purpose, like of living, and like that you are like truly like a unique individual with a soul, and like your life has purpose and meaning because God gives it that. So I was kind of stuck with that question, like going back and forth. But when you have religion, when you have God, all of these things become so much less fragile. Because if you think about, like one of them was cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the things you can do is like reframing things. And you hear that like when people are like doing affirmations and things like that, like I am good, I am loved, whatever. And you have all those things. But if I'm just saying that to myself in the mirror and starting my day, psychologically, it does have an effect on you. But if you start asking those questions, well, like, how do I know that's true? If you're coming from a secular point of view, it's because I said so, because I'm making it true. But if you come from a perspective of faith, you can say, because God says it's true, because we see it in scripture and tradition. And I think that was a cool thing for me to kind of realize, like, all my secular classes have kind of pointed me towards Christ. Yeah.
Right, because
That's
all
really good.
science and education done correctly does point you towards Christ.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. All right, guys, I dig this. We're almost out of time. Julian, do you have anything you want to go off on for a minute?
Oh yeah, my microphone was muted. Go figure. The producer Julian ran for today. I want to talk about millennials. Millennials, you guys are really letting us down. I look at the Gen Z, or the generation that is like now becoming adults, and they are passionate about whatever it is they believe in. Now, there's a lot of conservatives that are really into their faith, and there's a lot of atheists that are into whatever they're into, but they are passionate about what they're into. And my generation, the millennials, mine and John Henry's, we have no passion.
About
it's
anything.
driving me nuts. And where is the passion, and where's the respect for the elder generations? We can learn so much from them, because Gen Z is looking at us for how they're going to approach life. And if they don't look at us, who respects the generation before us, they're definitely not going to respect us. So in order to really help to keep making this world a better place, try and have passion about what you have passion about and show it.
I agree on the first point. I agree that one thing I really appreciate about Gen Z is their passion, rightly directed or not, about things, which I think is really cool. Like I really do. I think a lot of times it's misdirected, but I think it's really good. That being said, I'm not gonna let a compliment of the baby boomers go unchallenged on this show, because I blame them for a lot of our generation's apathy. And so I don't know. I guess any thoughts on that?
There's some fairness to that. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Don't get me started on the baby boomers.
Yeah, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, we got about a minute left. We're going to do lightning speed popsicle sticks.
Oh
What do
yeah,
you
let's
think?
do it.
All right,
Let's do it.
do
That sounds fun.
All right, I'll go first with. These are the handmade ones that are always much more like thought out, and I feel like my answers are deeper than the pre-made ones. What book are you reading, or movie have you watched recently, or song that has impacted you? Okay, I like that one. What am I reading right now? Okay, I just finished. I'm not a big fiction guy, but I just finished the 1 Second After John Matherson quadrology or whatever. I just finished the 4th book. They just came out. The 4th book is fairly recent, and it's excellent. It's about an EMP that explodes over the United States, and all power is knocked out in the country. history
Whoa.
and sort of the cobbling back together
Wow.
of society, and it's
Fun.
excellent. Yeah. All right, what you got, Josh?
Which of your senses do you value the most? I'm going to go with sight.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's kind of an easy one. Partly because you can do a lot more to like repair hearing if things go wrong.
And you gotta know what fruit are ripe and where the snakes are.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Mine is pretty basic. Would you rather vacation at the mountains or beach? And I would say beach all day.
I
every
just
day.
like really talked up these popsicle sticks, and they were kind of just straightforward, easy answers. Producer
Sorry to
Julie, do you want
disappoint.
to answer this one?
If you can do it very fast.
What movie would you recommend?
Oh, I'd recommend the Batman trilogy by James Cameron.
Heck yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This has been Honest to God, a production of the Quest Atlanta Catholic Radio. Producer Julian,
Signing off.
over and out.